Recently, I've been trying to figure out the hunger in Little Nightmares. It always felt supernatural or evil in origin, but as I was trying to piece together how exactly it worked, I stumbled across today's theory, and I do mean stumbled. No, this one is another rabbit hole, so sit down, grab a cup of tea and listen why I tell you exactly how Six could be a siren. So I feel like at this point it should be obvious, but spoilers for the entire Little Nightmares franchise in this video. Now I know what you might be thinking, Tericho, you are really scraping the bottom of the barrel for theories now, aren't you? But no, actually this theory came to me out of nowhere, but as soon as I started digging, I came up with a bunch of evidence that actually supports this one. So as I said, this theory started while I was thinking about the hunger in Little Nightmares. The guests in Little Nightmares 1 travel to the moor by boat, knowing full well that no one ever comes back. While there, they seem entranced, singing in unison before gorging themselves on anything they can fit in their mouths. Finally, they fall asleep being chopped up by the chefs and fed to the next load of guests who arrive. This is where I first noticed the links with sirens. Sirens are Greek mythological creatures. It is said that they would lure sailors to their island with their songs. Once the sailors shipwrecked on their island, the sirens would kill them. The most common story of sirens is that of Ulysses or Odysseus. Ulysses wanted to hear the siren's song, although he knew that by doing so he would be enchanted and therefore would fall prey victim to them. So what Ulysses did was put wax in his crewmate's ears and tied himself to the mast so that even though he would be enchanted, he wouldn't be able to act upon it. This already sounds very familiar to the moor, doesn't it? The moor is a monstrous underwater vessel, but the top of the structure pokes out above the sea, just like an island. The guests also seem to be lured there, but how? What is drawing them to this place? What if they are being lured there by the song we hear on the TV? The song that some people call the Veronica Song. After all, we know that the song was played on TVs across the Pale City in Little Nightmares 2, and we also hear the bullies sing the song in the school, albeit their own twisted version. This song is already creepy enough. The way that the girl on the TV seems to be a real girl and not animated like the rest of the game is already slightly disturbing, but the song just sounds out of tune, and it reminds me of how old television shows would have slightly distorted audio.
Hey, 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 that supply of Ritz seems on the fritz.
No, stop, darling. Don't blow your top. I always keep another box handy.
Dandy! He knows Ritz crackers are richer, crisper, and his mouth is full, or he'd help us whisper. Only Nabisco bakes Ritz.
We know that the moor has advertisements. We see them littered around the Pale City, and I do think the Veronica Song is just that, an advertisement. But what if the song in the advert was actually the magic that entrances the guests? Rather than just convincing them to travel to the moor, it actually enchants them. The guests hear the song, are enchanted until all they can think about is food, and where else to go for food than the all-you-can-eat buffet? So it's possible that the TV song is how guests were lured to the moor to their deaths, just like the sirens would lure sailors with their song. After all, this song is incredibly catchy, and it just loops on repeat. That doesn't really seem like a normal advert, does it? This would explain why the guests seem happy to march towards their own deaths. It would also explain why the guests seem to chant on their way inside the moor. Like I said, it seems like they are entranced. Remember that because we're going to come back to that later. Going back to sirens, they are all female, but a lot of people actually mistake sirens for mermaids or merfolk. Sirens don't actually look half person, half fish, they instead were originally described as having the heads of women with the bodies and feet of birds. What's very strange about this fact though, is that there is another link to this we could explore. Remember how I have pointed out that Little Nightmares was heavily inspired by Studio Ghibli movies? At least in aesthetics anyway, and I have previously called Little Nightmares Dark Ghibli. Well, in Spirited Away, Yubaba, the main antagonist, has the ability to transform into a bird-like creature, but she retains her head. Her pet bird also looks exactly like the description of a siren, albeit smaller. It's pretty obvious that the bathhouse in Spirited Away shares a number of similarities with the moor in Little Nightmares, but the link between sirens and Yubaba is also very interesting. So if we accept that the song in Little Nightmares 1 has the power to lure people to the moor, we have to accept that either the song has power or someone behind the song has power. We already know that the lady has powers, she displays them often in Little Nightmares 1 and the DLC. So it's entirely possible that she is using the song to lure people to the moor, or the song is acting independently and she's just taking advantage of it. Either way, the idea that the song could have power over people feeds into the next part of my theory. In Little Nightmares 2, we see that the viewers are similarly entranced to the guests, except they are unnaturally drawn to watching TV. So much so that they will fall to their deaths to follow their favourite TV show. I thought Supernatural fans were dedicated, but this is a whole other level. We even see one viewer take the TV into the bathtub with them. Safety warning, please don't do that. I like my shows to have shocking twists, but not literally. But what if the same magic was at play here? We can see or hear a number of different TV channels in the Pale City, but they pretty much all share one common theme. They all have incredibly catchy jingles. Now this doesn't prove anything, but I find it pretty interesting that we now have two separate groups of people who have both been entranced or enchanted, and both of them seem to have been affected by a song. Songs crop up so many times across the Little Nightmares games. We hear the TV songs in Little Nightmares 1 and 2, the bullies sing the Veronica Song when they play, the teacher plays a tune on her piano, pretty well I might add, the lady hums a song to herself, and finally, Six. Six plays the song on the music box at the start of Little Nightmares 2 and again in the signal tower. Now you might have caught on to what I'm hinting with this. Six also lures people to her with a song. At the start of Little Nightmares 2, Six is playing the music box while trapped in the hunter's basement. Mono somehow miraculously teleports to a television not too far away from her, releases her, and then helps her along the way until she is captured by the Thin Man. I find it very convenient that Mono appeared here to save Six. He had little reason to travel here since he had the ability to transport himself through televisions, and the Pale City and surrounding areas are littered with them. What if he was drawn here? Drawn, just like the sailors, to his death. But this isn't the only time Six draws Mono with a song. While trapped in the signal tower, Six plays the music box once again. This time Mono is drawn to the signal tower to rescue her yet again. Although this time, when he frees her, Six betrays Mono and leaves him. This trickery also reminds me of the Sirens. They lure sailors to their island, which gets them killed. Six did exactly the same thing to Mono. We also see Six do this to Roger too. She literally lures him with the song into the room so she can grab the crank. Now, interestingly enough, it's possible that Six was unaware of this power she had. After all, Six at the start of Little Nightmares 2 seems defeated. It looks like she has given up. Six by the end of the game seems cold and brutal, dropping Mono and barely flinching before leaving the signal tower and making her way to the moor. Maybe Six was unaware of her power and it was just coincidence that she drew Mono to her. But if you think about all of the Little Nightmares games, people are always drawn to Six, and not just their enemies. In the first game in the timeline, Very Little Nightmares, the protagonist, who we assume is friendly, chases Six the entire game. In Little Nightmares 2, Mono is drawn to Six twice, the bullies string Six up but leave Mono in the locker, and in Little Nightmares 1, the entire moor seems to want a piece of her. But yet again, a boy in Little Nightmares 1 is drawn to helping Six and ends up dying for it. The runaway kid offers Six the bread near the start of the game, the first time we see Six experience the hunger. That was his only food, and it didn't look like he was being given much. The same boy offers Six a sausage once he'd been turned into a gnome, which leads to his death as Six preys upon him instead. This is now two boys that are drawn to helping Six, and both of them end up dead. Well, dead or trapped. Two sailors lured to their deaths by a female that is not what she seems. But to go even deeper down this rabbit hole, I discussed earlier that sirens come from Greek mythology. While a lot of the Little Nightmares world seems inspired by Japanese culture, it's not impossible that other cultures or mythologies were inspirations for Little Nightmares. But if we were to take a look at Six's name, in Old Greek it takes on a whole other meaning. In Biblical or Koine Greek, the Greek that followed Ancient Greek, the number 6 is pronounced hex. This is where modern English gets the prefix hex or hexa, as in a hexagon or hexadecimal. But another meaning of the word hex is a curse or enchantment. In fact, to hex someone could be synonymous with to bewitch someone, bewitching meaning entrancing someone. In fact, the German word hexe translates to witch, and the Polish version of the Witcher TV show, which was not very good by the way, was called the Hexa. So with our knowledge of Siren's call, and our knowledge that Six draws people to her, it's possible that Six is hexing people, maybe without her even knowing it. This would explain why people seem to always react to Six in one of three ways. They either want to capture her, help her, or flee from her. In fact, wouldn't this be a pretty good explanation of why Six wants to take the lady's powers? Imagine in this world of nightmares that you constantly draw people towards you, not necessarily on purpose. Maybe her claiming the lady's powers was to stop these people and monsters from relentlessly pursuing her. In fact, I stated in a previous theory that when we see Big Villain 6 in the signal tower, she seems to want to be left alone, and it's only when Mono breaks the music box that she becomes aggressive. Maybe she finally found peace in the signal tower, maybe no one was drawn to her there, because they could not enter. In fact, maybe this is why Mono seems so determined to destroy the music box. Maybe Mono knew something we didn't. Maybe he knew about Six's power, or her siren's call, and maybe that played into the reason why Six dropped Mono at the end of the game. Or maybe she knew Mono would always be drawn to her, and maybe she saw dropping him as a chance to be rid of him. After all, Six almost seemed content to be trapped alone in the hunter's basement. Maybe that has been her goal all along. The girl who draws people to her with a siren song just wants to be left alone. Well, this is my theory on how Six is a siren. Maybe not exactly a siren, but a similar monster with basis in Greek mythology. Let me know what you thought about this theory down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.